Scuba goes under the sea. The podcast for the inquisitive diver.
Okay, Scuba IQ. Now, we've not had many people on from up Cairns yet. We've had Libby's been on, Libby Sterling. But you guys are much more focused on the almost like a white glove experience, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess, existing in a world that, for a number of decades now up here has been very much about, larger volume sort of operations that, it's, I guess we're trying to slot into that narrow little niche where, you could have somebody who, maybe wants to get a slightly more personalized experience out on the reef, even though we do use, some of the bigger boats anyway, we use those space, comfort, access to the reef, that sort of thing. But, what they're actually wanting, is that opportunity to draw on perhaps my experience or, that of the other instructors that I use from time to time as well. So, we're not for everyone. If you're looking for sort of an overall kind of experience, all of the operators up here, I think, are quite good. But like I say, we're just trying to, take advantage of that very narrow band of the market.
Yeah, so more focused on people that want specific kind of experiences.
Yep.
Yeah, not large boats with lots of divers.
No.
So where did it all start? I mean, let's have a bit of background on you, actually, Martin. We obviously go to the same hairdresser, but where do you originate
Not very
from?
often. Yeah, not very often. I'm originally from New Zealand, like a lot of the dive instructors who find their way up here. Yeah. Grew up in New Zealand, British parents, actually British born, but, moved to New Zealand when I was very, very young. Joined the military in the sort of towards the late 90s, the Navy. And not through being in the Navy as such, but because of a friend that I made who was also in the Navy with me. I got introduced to scuba diving as, just sort of a recreation and a little hobby. And it was just a thing I did for fun. Normally just with him, we'd go away for a weekend or whatever. And then after a few years of serving in the Navy and I left, took a bit of time off and was wondering about, what I might like to do. And, I thought, well, scuba diving was something that maybe I'd, considered to take up as a career. And so I became a dive instructor in the early 2000s and worked in New Zealand for a time. Came over to the Great Barrier Reef in my early 20s, spent some time working here, and then left Australia and spent 8 years working in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
Primarily Spain. So I lived in Spain for a total of about 6.5, nearly 7 years. And then finally made the pilgrimage to Thailand,
Hey.
Southeast Asia. And that was something that was, was really, really different to the experience that I'd had while being in the Mediterranean. It was like a parallel scuba diving universe. And so I ended up being there for a few years. That was where I met Lou. We stayed for a couple more years, and then about now 7.5 years ago, we ended up back here in far north Queensland, and here we are.
Yeah. So whereabouts in Thailand were you?
Over on the west coast, PP.
Yeah. So I never worked on PP. I was based out of Cowlack when I was on the west coast, just covering the Similans and Surin Islands.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place, isn't it? I love Thailand. I love the Thai people.
Oh. Yeah, it's one of those ones, I guess. There's an instructor that works with us here as well, and he was in Thailand on Koh Tao for quite a long time at Buddha View. Mm-hmm. He was sort of part of the team with, teaching the IDCs. And, we sort of, often reminisce, as you find most instructors who have spent some time working in Thailand do. Life is so simple there, it's, you go to work, you do some diving, and then you go and socialize, and that's pretty much it. And almost everything you do on a daily basis is just fun.
It is.
There's nothing that kind of bogs you down or anything like that. The biggest nuisance at that time was having to make a visa run every 3 months, but that was about the extent of it. So
getting packed onto a minibus.
Yeah, it was a fantastic period in my career.
I think there's a lot of people, a lot of long-term people in the industry that have worked in Thailand at some sort of point in their career. I think it's a good thing. We've all got that link through scuba diving, but then to have the experience of Thailand as well as a bit of a link, it's a nice little added bonus.
Yeah, totally. And sorry, you carry on.
I was going to say, how did it compare to Spain?
Well, Mediterranean, and look, I was there for quite a long time, and that wasn't just because I didn't have any other choice, but I wanted to be there. And I guess in a way, like Thailand, you have a fantastic lifestyle out of the water. Having an appreciation that the diving is not going to be, like you can have in Southeast Asia and, Caribbean, many other parts of the world. But it was quite a conscious decision that took me to the Mediterranean in the first place. And most of that came out of the fact that, when I became an instructor, I was still fairly young, early 20s. Mm-hmm. And at that time, on the PADI website, on the job board, a job would get advertised, and then you could see every single person that had replied. It would get pasted underneath.
Okay.
And so you could get a bit of a heads up as to what you're up against. Yeah. And so you were looking at a lot of the good jobs around the world, and you've got, some Italian guy who's been an instructor for 10 years, speaks 4 or 5 languages, outboard license, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And so rather than getting disheartened, I thought, okay, well, it looks like, the big thing, apart from experience, of course, is languages. Mm. So I thought, good place to learn languages, especially European ones, would be Europe. So I left the Great Barrier Reef and got to Europe and thought, okay, well, let's focus on one to start with. And I was in London at the time visiting my sister, and I said, right, I'm ready to leave the UK. I've been here long enough. It's time to go back to diving. Mm. And I went on the Ryanair website, looked for the cheapest flight, and it was to Valencia. It left the next morning at about 6 a.m. It was about, £2.99 special or something. And I bought that flight and ended up in Spain for a number of years. And so, built my language skills. And that was, even though I'd been teaching in other places before that for a couple of years, over time I certainly realized that the time I spent in Mediterranean is where I really cut my teeth as an instructor and not just as an instructor, but, laid the foundation for me to have what I think so far is quite a lengthy dive career.
Yeah. Oh, good on you. It's funny that you mentioned the dive jobs boards. And I keep meaning to do a post about it because all I see in social media at the moment is job after job after job after job. And there's all the rare ones are coming up. Wakatobi, Turks and Caicos. Yeah. You're like, bloody hell, people. If you really want to get into the dive industry, now is the time to do it. Even if you've got no experience as a DM, a dive master or instructor, you can gain that experience. But you're going to gain that experience at a much higher level location than what was ever possible in over the last 20, 25 years. Yeah. There's so many people have left the industry now that have had that experience and have been forced back into other industries that it's such a wide open industry at the moment, and it's a prime opportunity for fresh blood to come through.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting listening to some of your other conversations you've had over the past few months. There was was his name Steve Crosby?
Oh yeah,
that you spoke to in Mexico.
Yeah,
so him talking about what he's been through there and how things are looking moving forward, and then further back there was Marcel Vandenberg and Koh Tao who was talking about that this could be the real the time to strike when it comes to getting into the industry. It's like you say, it's these these rare jobs that never come up. And, you know, I mean, when I first came and worked out of Cairns, you know, I'd been an instructor in New Zealand for a couple of years, you know, and taught ice diving, you know, I sort of felt fairly well equipped. And I got to Cairns, and the best that I could get was dive deck. You know, it was snorkel guiding and signing people in and out of the water. And they were like, you've got to prove yourself here first for a while before we're going to let you take paying customers. You know, but you didn't. I don't know. You didn't roll your eyes or anything. You just accepted that. Well, there's, you know, they found that this is something that works up here, and maybe they've been let down in the past, and you just got to play that game. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I'm sure those routines will stay, because I couldn't imagine employing anyone without, you know, giving them a probationary period and making sure that they don't mind getting their hands dirty. However, you know, having the much wider spectrum of possibilities now is just immense. And I can't see it changing for another 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, there's people crying out for experience. And sure enough, I mean, the operators, bless them, they're going to have to make do with people that don't have all that experience of 4 languages, compressor, rebuild, engineer, coxswain, 95 specialty instructor. It's going to have to reduce, but they're going to be able to mould the future of diving, I think.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. And I just hope that the kids that are out there are listening and eager to get on board do actually, you know, take the jump, do it. They're going to be much better off.
Yeah. You know, and I think with that, you know, I guess because it's easier for me to compare to, you know, where I started out, that it was a lot more about, you know, having good experience, you know, and the fact that I'd been an engineer in the Navy, so I had, you know, the ability to, you know, repair outboard motors and, you know, various other mechanical things, you know, rebuild compressors. And so, you know, those things came in handy for me. But, you know, you certainly see now, probably over the last sort of 5 or 6 years especially, that, you know, a lot more employers will be looking for things like, okay, well, you're a dive instructor, but, oh, I see you're also, you know, you've set up your own little business doing social media marketing, and oh, you can build websites, and, you know, all of these other things that will drive a business. Yeah,
yeah. And that's a huge one. I mean, I think I used to work in Papua New Guinea at Tufi Resort, and it's a bit limited on connectivity while you're there, and it's a bit difficult to do the social media, but I see the managers at the moment are trying to post regularly. However, it's a photo and a little bit of a comment. It's not up to speed with what you see, all singing, all dancing, that, you know, kids that know how to use a phone can do in 35, 40 seconds. It's insane. So that's a huge advantage, just being able to, you know, assist with the marketing and leave the management to get on with the daily job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess, you know, one of the things that stands out for me is that, you know, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I had a young guy, probably early 30s. He was from France, I think. And he sent through a CV, you know, just cold calling. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he was relatively inexperienced, but it was like he was really trying to sort of pad out his experience as an instructor. But if you look at the rest of his CV, you know, he'd worked at a marketing company in Paris for 10 years. Mm-hmm. He had a master's degree in marketing and advertising. He had an MBA. And I just messaged him back and said, hey, look, there's no opportunities with us, but hey, don't sell yourself short here. You know, it's great that you're a dive instructor, but don't be afraid to put, you know, more focus and attention on to these other things that you've done. You know, you know, you're employed at one place for 10 years. That says quite a lot. You've got these fantastic skills, you know, experience with, you know, marketing, advertising, that highly desirable for a lot of companies out there. So, you know, maybe use that as your sort of Trojan horse as such. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Especially to help out people of our age and further down. I've got no fucking clue about it, to be honest. I put a photo up, put some comments and a bit of a hashtag, and hope that it does the job. And then I'm happy if it's got over 10 likes, so, you know, blue thumbs up. Happy days. Joe, your mum comments on it.
Yeah. Well, it's usually my dad, actually. Oh, dear. Yeah. Hey. One thing I wanted to talk about is the Minkies. the website, the minkies are coming. Are they there yet?
So about 2 weeks ago, there was one of the boats that was out of Port Douglas, not one of the sort of scheduled tour operators, one of the super yachts. They were on a trip out, and they saw a few minkies out there. So you'd probably say normally, being 2 weeks ago, so what's that, sort of early to mid-May, that would be really early.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever. Basically, they're coming or they're here. So yeah, it's looking good. I'm actually going to be going on a total of 4 minky trips this year. Mm-hmm. There's one that's my own, which is the one at the end of June, and then there are 3 other trips that are being done on the same boat that we're using. There's one that goes the week before mine. There's another one that goes a few days later from when we get back, and then there's another one in mid-July as well. So, yeah, hopefully we get some pretty solid minky action. It's such an amazing thing, that they let you, well, not just let you swim with them, but the fact that you jump in the water and they come to you. It's so
how's it all work? I mean, you imagine people that are listening to this will not have a clue of how the operations work in Cairns and what it involves jumping in the water with whales. What's a kind of routine that you go through? So
for what we're doing, and what some of the other operators who actually change their schedules through this time of year do is, well, the first thing is you've got to have a permit to be allowed to swim with them. And the linchpin is that the minke whales are pretty predictable, and there's a spot that's up towards Lizard Island on the ribbon reefs, and pretty much without fail, year after year on their migration, they go and hang out there for quite a while, 2-3 weeks. Some interactions, there might just be 2 or 3, and it might only last, 5-10 minutes. But over the years, you can have sort of 18, 20 whales at once, and they stick with you for 7 or 8 hours.
Bloody hell.
So you get up there. So on the trip we're doing, we leave in the evening. It's a 15, 16-hour cruise up to that spot. So you basically wake up on the ribbons and you pull up at this spot. You throw a couple of ropes in because that's one of the conditions for being able to swim with them. There's a code of conduct in place for swimming with minke whales. Everyone gets in, mast, snorkel, fins, holds onto the rope, and you just sit there and wait, and the minkies come in and hang out.
Oh, so they actually come to you then? You don't have to go kind of looking for them? You
can certainly look for them, but there are conditions on that, let's say that, there's another boat that's 2 miles away, or let's say 2 miles behind you, you've gone past, and they call you on the radio and say, have you got minkies back here? You're not really allowed to turn the boat around and go back to them.
Right.
Yeah, so, you're not supposed to sort of alter your course as such, to go and find them or anything else. So, we'll sort of, we aim for these areas, like I say, up on the northern end of the ribbon reefs, where we sort of expect that they're going to be. And you sort of pull up and, you have to wait. Sometimes you don't have to wait. If they're not really showing much interest or you haven't found any, we've got a lot of dive sites nearby. So we might say to everyone, hey, look, let's take a couple of hours out. We'll have a bit of morning tea. We'll cruise over to dive site X. We'll go and do a dive over there and we'll take it from there, So, you're still trying to maximize, the time that you're spending in that really amazing area, but the primary focus being that, you're trying to swim with these whales.
And is it, what's the attraction? Are they just very, very curious?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, they're like big dolphins. So they'll be very curious. They can have, or they'll display quite a lot of varied behavior. So they're quite interactive in that way as well. They don't just sort of swim around and around and around and around in circles. they'll come up and they'll spy hop. They have we look around on the surface. They'll roll. Yeah, they'll roll over onto their back and they'll swim around belly up at the surface. They'll come up, clap their mouth. There are all these different things that you might get a chance to see, and you never get bored of watching it because you kind of don't know what they're going to do next, and you'll sort of see how over time spent in the water, you'll see them gradually come closer and closer, and I mean they'll sort of be going to cruise past you, and then they'll literally just slow down and eyeball you and just cruise right past in front of you, and other times they'll come up in front of you and you've sort of got to swim back and out of the way to avoid them. It's spectacular.
And is it usually, does it matter the kind of age of the minkies, whether it's the adults? I mean, I know with humpbacks that the calves get quite curious, more so than the mums.
Yeah.
Is it similar with the minkies, or is it not really, I think?
Yeah, look, it's you can never really know. I'd probably say, I haven't seen as many calves or haven't had as many close interactions with calves over the years.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not just on these trips, but, as they come through these areas, the reefs off of Port Douglas or Cairns, they can be up there as well for a couple of days. So, on one of the day trips, you might get the chance to swim with them. When that happens, it is usually just the odd one or two.
Yeah.
But these trips, that get run up to the ribbon reefs, this is for the really sort of, I guess, the more kind of dense interactions with, greater numbers and for longer periods of time.
Yeah. How big do they get?
They reckon the biggest, about 8 to 9 meters, but they sort of top out about 8. Yeah, they're quite, small for a whale.
Yeah,
the second smallest species of baleen whale. So
it's small for a whale, but it's still a bloody monstrous size, isn't it? Jesus.
Yeah. But no, it's awesome.
And that's you say that's what was the boat again? Is that the same boat that you use for the diving liveaboards?
Yeah. So Argo.
Let's talk about Argo. It looks very sexy.
Yeah, very cool boat. Look, Argo was a boat that was it was here in Port Douglas for a while, and then changed ownership, and that's now based just down the road in Yorkeys Knob, which is northern end of Cairns.
Okay.
So that lives down there, and look, the boat overall, about I think 24, 25 meters, something like that. But really nicely set up at the back. Where you gear up for diving, it's right on the duck board. So you gear up, stand up, and then basically do a 180-degree turn and then step off the back.
Yeah.
So super easy in that regard. Inside, it's really lush. The cabins are nice. There's a couple of ensuite rooms. All of the cabins are quite large, actually. And that's, of course means that, guest numbers are quite low. So, we only take 12 people on these trips, so
that's nice.
Again, it's still in keeping with, with the ethos that we had with Scuba IQ. We didn't want to change our philosophy, or sacrifice what's worked for us. So still small, it's fully guided. It's, trying to be a bit more intimate and have that time with the guests as well out of the water.
Yeah. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but is this the boat that Sylvia used a few years back? Sylvia Earle. Did she not use it going up into some of the...
I'm not sure.
Let me do a little Google. I think it might.
Sylvia Earle might have been on a boat called Beluga. I'm not sure. But, I don't
as soon as I Google it, the first thing that comes up is a cruise ship. It's definitely not that one.
No. No. But it's really cool because, the boat, outside of what we do, it's quite busy anyway. It does a lot of, research expeditions, support for marine biologists. They do trips for the turtle nesting up at the very top at Rain Island.
Yeah.
They go and help out at the weather station at Willis Island, ferrying the attendants back and forth when they change over. They do all sorts. So, when we approached them about what we wanted to do, there was, it wasn't really any territory that they hadn't covered before.
Yeah.
And the big one as well with that boat, which is really important, is, not just the permit to operate, but there's another organisation up here that there are quite a few companies that are members and even some individuals, and, formed a number of years ago, and they basically, set themselves up so that they could have this network of shared moorings, particularly on the ribbon reefs.
Mm-hmm.
And, you could become a member of that group. And then that meant that, you would have access to these, amazing dive sites like the Cod Hole and Steve's Bommy and, many of these other dive sites. And without, being a member of that group or having that permit, you can plan those trips, but then it becomes logistically a bit more complicated. You're going to be anchoring quite a lot, which, you don't really want to be doing. Or you could be on a dive site, and if another member of this organisation shows up, they can, ask you to leave, and you've got no recourse. So, it's a really good organisation that's in place to try and, make sure that not only we have these amazing places to dive, but that they're being looked after, and, the right sort of vessels are using them, and we're able to get people out to see these places.
Yeah, yeah. So everything's, what's the word? How's it all regulated up there then? I know, I'm just thinking back to the Similans, the captains would talk to each other to make sure that they're not on the same dive sites.
Yeah.
All the boats at once. And I'm assuming the similar kind of thing occurs up there. Is it much more restricted than that?
So with these sites, so specifically these ones on the ribbon reefs, the organisation, it's not huge. I think it's only got about 14 or 15 members. I'm not entirely sure. But you've got basically two tiers. You've got, a few of the long-term players in the top tier, and, they get first refusal.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone else kind of, slots in wherever.
Yeah.
So it's all pretty easy. The captains, the people involved, they generally know each other.
Yeah.
And so, for example, when we did our trip to the Ribbon Reefs, it's about 6 weeks ago now, we got to Steve's Bommy first thing in the morning. We were planning to make 2 dives. The Spirit of Freedom were in the area. They saw we're on Steve's Bommy, and they just radioed us and said, "Hey guys, just so you know, we've booked Steve's Bommy from midday onwards." Okay. We're like, "Yep, no worries. We're going to do 2 dives and we'll leave." And so, from there, you then sort of, you are talking to each other as well. You might want to say, "Hey, look, we're looking at using, let's say, another dive site nearby, Temple of Doom or Joni's Joy. Hey, we're looking at heading over this way. How does that fit in with what you guys are doing?" And
yeah.
It's, you've just got to be grown-ups about it, and just figure it out.
Yeah, fair one. So, you must have a favourite dive site out of that lot?
Oh, look, the easy pick up there is always going to be Steve's Bommy. Have you been there?
I've not, no. I've, of my, 4.5 years in Australia now, I've not once dived in Cairns yet. The one time that we came up just before pandemic was when it was the wettest December recorded in history or something like that. We had 9 days of just downpour. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So look, Steve's Bommy, it's always an easy one. It's just reliably good. And it's sort of one of those things that, you could almost say that if something can be found on the Great Barrier Reef, you've got a good chance of finding it there.
Okay.
But I don't know, I've got a soft spot for another dive site that's further up called Pixie's Pinnacle. It is literally just a small tower. The bottom's not particularly deep. And the top, it's fairly shallow, but you often get really clear water out there. And it's just a really pretty dive site. I don't know. I just went there for the first time and thought, how beautiful is this? And I just think it's a fantastic dive. So,
do you get much biodiversity there?
Look, not as much as Steve's Bommy, I'd say. Look, you still get a lot of cool stuff, a lot of nudibranchs, when you sort of hang out a bit deeper or away from the pinnacle itself, you'll see, schools of barracuda, trevally. You can see some big grouper out there as well. But it's when you really sort of tuck in and look in all the little nooks and crannies, you can find lots of pretty cool stuff. Like the electric clams, the flame shells, that sort of thing. And, it's a beautiful spot.
I'm just having a quick look on there. Pixies. I'll make a note of that one.
And the other cool thing as well that, when you do these trips, and Pixies Pinnacle is a good example, is that, when you are in the vicinity, of that dive site, it's not just that you've got this one site on its own, you've got half a dozen within a mile of each other, it's, So you've got quite a lot of options when it comes to trying to pick the right dive site based on conditions and tides and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And right, what's the seasons like? I mean, is there a particular time of year that you prefer for around your location?
I think if you ask most locals up here about the best time of year, you'd probably find most people would say October, November.
Okay.
The weather's usually fairly calm. Sunny days. The water's, warming up a little bit. It's usually quite a lot of fish activity. So it just ticks quite a few boxes. So that's a bit of a highlight. I mean, for us as well. It shows how soft we are up here, but, with the winters that we have, we suffer through sort of the 22, 23 degree waters. We get into October, November, and we can get back into our 3 meals, and so.
I can't remember the last time I dived in a 3 mil wetsuit. Sydney water's bloody freezing at the moment. Yeah. Well, we're, I think I mentioned it the other day. The missus and I are just legging it across to Indonesia next month, and get a couple of weeks diving over there. And I wouldn't say it's particularly much warmer because, like Nusa Penida, there's 3 converging currents, but plenty of mantas to see, and you never know, might get lucky with the odd mola. Probably the wrong time of year for them, but fingers crossed.
And this thing in Galapagos, what's happening there?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was so I planned the Galapagos expedition for October 2020, and then obviously the pandemic years hit in, and we had to cancel and push back, and it's just kept on rolling. And I hate the idea of stressing the dive industry out, but even more so customers. And I hate the idea of, booking vouchers for different trips and all that kind of stuff. So Master Liverboards were really good. Work with them. I've got a good couple of mates that work for them. A big shout out to Alex. He's the man. And we just kept it rolling, and our customers were patient. And now it's rolled round so that we've got the booking for next year. But of course we're 2.5 years on, and a couple of people have had to drop out because of, life changes because of pandemic years, et cetera. It might even be the pandemic baby boom or something. I don't know. So there's a couple of spaces opened up. So we're going to go next year.
Yep.
It's just gone online now. And it's at a reduced price. It's not at this year's pricing. It's almost the same as it was in 2020, and the people that are already going on the boat are outstandingly good, fun people and great divers. Yeah. So really looking forward to that. And, initially Jazz, my missus, she wasn't going to come on the trip in 2020, but having had 2 years of lockdown and us not being able to go anywhere, she's jumping on as well. So everyone who's coming on the boat has got the bonus of having my missus on the boat, who's just an absolutely outstanding lady. She's lovely. So really looking forward to that. And
what's it going to be? 7 or 8 days, or
it's 7 days? Yeah, or 7 nights. Sorry. So we'll leave on the 24th of July and then back on the 31st. And
so when you originally planned it, was Darwin's Arch still in Arch?
Yeah. We're going to go and see Darwin's pillars now. Unfortunately, yeah, that's come down. But we were lucky enough to see them back in 2018 when we were there.
Okay.
But it's an exceptional location in the world. I mean, it's bloody pricey, but
yeah,
I've dived a lot of locations, and the Galapagos is just, it's out there on its own, and it's not stunning reefs and great visibility and all that kind of stuff, but the Antarctic waters that come up and the currents and the nutrients that are in there, you see a whale shark in Thailand, it's 2 to 4 meters. You see a whale shark in the Galapagos, they start at 10 meters. They're huge. Hammerhead shoals are thousands upon thousands of hammerheads, all just sitting in the waters and getting a good clean and a bit of sleep sometimes as well. Did you know hammerheads sleep on their side in the current? You'll see them listing over to one side, and they close down one side of the brain to go to sleep, and the other one stays awake to keep control.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Well, no, not sharks. The dolphins. Yeah, they sleep one side of the brain at a time. But I didn't know that about sharks. And
yeah.
No,
it's, have you dived the Galapagos?
No, it's still one of the many places that have been on the list that I've never made it to. And there was a friend of mine that you actually spoke to him a while ago, Marcus Blake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've known Marcus for quite a long time. Hey, Marcus.
He's a good
guy. He went there where I think you met him in Komodo. The couple that own that resort as kind of like some sort of wedding anniversary. I think that they went to Galapagos and they invited Marcus and his girlfriend to go with them.
Yeah.
I think they were there overall, I think they were there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and did something like a 7 or 8 day trip. And, and he got some pretty good photos out there as well, just to kind of remind me that it's a place that I want to get to. And, we'll see. Yeah. Life's maybe looking at calming down a little bit now.
Yeah.
So I guess, try and be optimistic and think that we can start to make plans like that again.
You've got to, mate. I mean, it's life is too short. You need to get everybody who's into diving that has some sort of experience needs to go to the Galapagos. It's as simple as that. It's phenomenal. There's locations in the world where you do negative entry and get out of current, all that kind of stuff, but there it's just a completely different style of diving. You bomb down, latch on with a hook, and it's a reef hook, but it's not a reef per se. A lot of the structure down there is lava rock. So, you latch on or nestle down behind boulders or natural topography and just watch the show going off, and you just sit there for as long as you can watching it. And it's outstanding. It's beautiful. Yeah. And then to do the hopping off the boat, you always jump off the boat a couple of times and head out onto one of the islands. And it's like walking in a different world. It's, you could almost say you were on the moon if it wasn't for the blue sky and the oxygen you're breathing, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It is. It's just nothing else compares to it. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
I love the place. And I'm so stoked that we're going back next year. I can't wait. Really can't wait.
Yeah. And it's cool, where you said that, you got a good bunch of people going I guess that was another thing that happened, with, when we started up the idea of the dive expeditions is certainly on the first trip that we ran, to the Ribbons and the Minka trip that's coming up. And then, also the coral spawning trip that we're doing in November, and already some of the other trips that we've got in the pipeline that we'll be, sort of announcing probably in the next few weeks it's more like, Martin's Social Club, it's basically and the way it worked out, it's been quite interesting too, because, over the last 2 years during COVID, it's been, so amazing how Australians have supported, especially areas like this one up here that are so vulnerable, because once tourism shut down, there was nothing else to fall back on. Same as, obviously other parts of Australia, but, we felt that pretty hard up here, but Australians, they still keep coming here, supporting the area. And pre-COVID, a lot of my market was not really domestic. Lots of Europeans, lots of Americans. And so now it kind of opened us or exposed us to this whole new market here in Australia. And basically once I sort of started throwing out the idea to a lot of these people about these trips, they're like, well, yeah, we'll put us down for 2 spots and we'll do this one, we'll do this one. And so, I almost filled all 3 of this year's trips without, any real effort. It was, there was no advertising for quite a long time. Just sort of quick phone call. Hey, look, we're doing Minkies and Journey. You coming? Can I ring you in 5 minutes? I'll let you know. Yep, there's 4 of us. Yep, cool, done.
Yeah.
And so it's awesome. And then, the thing that goes in with that is that, even though I knew most of these people or all of them in some cases, that, they're then of course getting to meet each other and, and that's like, oh, Martin's doing a trip to Osprey next year. Hey, you going to go on that one? Yep, we're doing this one. Okay, yep, we'll see you then. And, I guess it was, one of the driving factors behind starting Scuba IQ is to become quite a sort of, I guess, can I put it, maybe like a functioning part of the dive industry again.
Yeah. That,
you're driving that social side, which is so important to this industry. And, and it can get lost a little bit up here, with the bigger volumes. Mm-hmm. It's just the nature of it. So I guess we're trying to bring a bit more of that kind of Thailand style, within reason.
Yeah.
Really, making friends with your divers and, I mean, a lot of them, by the time they've come back here for the 2nd or 3rd time, they're round ours for barbecues and, and all sorts, So it's been really amazing. It doesn't just feel like you have a business, when those things are going on.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, I see it, again, it's social media. Everyone's got an armchair warrior in whatever group you're in. But I see people sometimes dissing agents and booking agents, etc. But there's a real requirement for agents at times, because if you want a particular experience and you're going to spend $4, $5, $6, $7, $10,000 on a lifetime trip that you're only going to do maybe once in your life, you want it to be special, and you don't want you don't want that one dickhead on the boat that spoils it for everyone. So if you've got an agent who is actually creating not only a great dive experience, but an environment on the boat or at the resort that everybody is constantly enjoying and getting on with one another without the hassle of having, the armchair warrior on board, then it's worth paying for, quite simply. I've been in experiences and situations where there's been one person on a boat that will just kill the vibe for 25 other guests, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. So, you're right. You're playing that hub of providing everything and creating not only a dive adventure, but a complete experience. And I think it's invaluable. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. And I mean, what we did before this last trip was, because we left early in the morning, everyone got to Cairns, the day or 2 before. And so I threw it out there a week or 2 before the trip left that, hey, look, it looks like everyone's going to be in town. How about we go and meet at Hemingway's, which is, a brewery down by the cruise liner port.
Yeah.
And, and I sort of, me and one of the other guides that was coming along with me on that trip, he was sort of like, hey, weren't we supposed to be there at 5:30? And it was about 6 o'clock. And I was like, it's fine. Anyway, we got there a bit late and, and I said it to him later. I was like, well, that wasn't unintentional. I didn't want to be there and then everyone just sort of wants to speak to me. I'm going to be intentionally late so that they don't have a choice other than to interact with each other, and, and so I got there and they've all sort of started their own little conversations and, they're away. So, it's not that you want to be the focal point of that group. You're just kind of facilitating that, that opportunity for them to meet each other and know each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I kind of operate when I'm doing nomadic scuba trips, and we'll always aim to turn up at the very outside the night before we move on to the boat or the resort or whatever, just to have that little gathering at the start, let people get rested and over a bit of jet lag, and it works wonders. And the Galapagos trip is a great example because we'll be rocking up 2 or 3 days before the boat leaves and having a couple of nights on San Cristobal so people can relax and have a chat, get to know each other, and possibly get a hangover out the way before we go into the diving days.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So where's it going from here then? Are you growing the business, or are you going to maintain at the levels you're at now?
Well, so Scuba IQ, that is where it started, and that will remain. It's still an important part of what we do, and like a lot of other people that once COVID came along and there was everyone's favorite word became pivot. To be honest, through the first few months, the biggest question was, in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months time, will I still be a part of the dive industry or not? That was actually the first question. It was not can I change my business? It was, do I need to leave this business?
Yeah.
And not to hang on to it, with any sort of false pride or anything like that. Just be realistic about it. So, the idea, or the thing that a lot of people did, of course, was, started online shops. For a couple of, reasons that wasn't really an option for us. And I guess so over time it just became, and I think I sort of said it to you when we spoke briefly the other day, was what COVID really did for us was not sort of try and go, we need to diversify and cover lots of little bases and get little streams going all over the place. Let's actually just focus on what's good about what we do. Mm-hmm. And really focus on that, work on that, develop what that is or was, because you also think that by the time you've been going 3 or 4 years, you've tried a few things, some have worked, some haven't. And, and because it's a flurry, you can forget some of the things you did when you started, but you've diverted away from those, and it's, a bit of a reset, I guess. And I thought, okay, that's kind of getting all of our ducks in a row here. Now, what would be something that we could offer that could be really cool, and that would be, something of interest to the people that have already dived with us and maybe don't just want to come back and, do the day trip again, or, they're not necessarily interested now that they're advanced open water. They're not thinking about becoming rescue divers. They just want to do good diving. And so, the idea of the expeditions became, it was, I guess, a fairly natural choice. And having the relationship with the boat, making that a fairly easy discussion, we're a good fit. And I guess just applying that same philosophy that we have with Scuba IQ, that it's going to be quite focused and specific. So we're not going to be doing weekly trips to the ribbon reefs. It's going to be this one here. It's going to be swimming with minkies. It's going to be coral spawning in November, and, get the ball rolling with those. And then next year, I can't say too much at the moment. Next year's going to be pretty amazing, I think, because we're going to start going further afield. It's, we're not trying to be all things to all people. It's like, these are what our divers are kind of saying that they want to do or would like to do. Yeah. So let's do that.
Are you going to do them like full boat charters?
Well, these are all full boat charters.
Nice.
Yeah. So we say to the boat, hey, look, coral spawning, ideal dates because of the full moon would be here to here. Are you available? And they go, yes. We go, right, okay, we'll book it.
Yeah.
So we arrange the charter, and then we, sell the tickets.
Yeah.
So the boat is ours.
Yeah. It's a.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first one, when the first time you actually booked an entire boat? It's quite frightening when you see that invoice come through, isn't it?
Yeah. It was, the one we did in April was the first one we've done, with these dive expeditions. When I was in Spain, though, I had like a little kind of offshoot, because where I was, I spent a lot of time around sort of Ibiza, Mallorca, Menorca. There's a lot of super yachts that go through there.
Yeah.
And so, some of them would be contacting your dive center to say, hey, our boss or our guests would love to go for a day of diving. Can we come in and pick up one of your instructors? And then they take us out diving for the day. Yeah. So you were getting, quite a lot of work being subcontracted by the super yacht industry. And then after a while, I was like, well, there's a couple of yachts here that are pretty cool. They're well set up for diving. I'm going to speak to them. And yeah, I was, sort of in my mid-20s and, at that time, barely scraping by on English, and, it was, like you say, you get that invoice and there it is, the tens and thousands of euros for a day. Yeah. And, so it's, and that's why I guess before you then do those things, you've got to think that you've got a very, very good chance of pulling it off. Yeah. It can't just be caution to the wind and, and to hell with it.
Hope for the best.
No. So, no, we are just dive instructors at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's it. We now need to find those youngsters that can do all the good stuff and promote it properly.
Yeah. So, apart from Galapagos, what's the plan? You got some other trips coming up, or?
I keep having people ask me that. At the moment, what we're doing, or what I'm doing, is much like you hinted at earlier on, when COVID hit. How the hell do you keep hold of being in the dive industry? And Nomadic Scuba, my booking agency, just literally had nothing coming through. So I think I took the right option in putting a curtain over the website, so that there was no bookings coming through. Wouldn't have to deal with reservations and deposits that were then getting held by the operators, because half of them were going out of business or God knows what else. So that's been closed off for over 2 years now. And in that time period, I picked up a day job. So I was working proper stuff, rather than dreaming about diving. And 6 weeks ago, I took the plunge, jumped away from that job and back into Nomadic Scuba 100% of the time. So at the moment, I'm working from home. We're having to update the website because, albeit it was all singing and all dancing, ready to go, 2 years later, it's a bit outdated. So I'm struggling through WordPress and all that other crap that you need to do to get it up to speed. And then we'll raise the curtain and get back to booking people's holidays and creating expeditions. I've got several mates of mine that have been working in the dive industry that are super keen to go out and start leading expeditions themselves as well. So we'll get that ball rolling, coupled in with this podcast, and the cheeky little trip to Indonesia to possibly buy a dive centre. So quite a lot going on right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Scuba Goat might have a little home in Indonesia at some point.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, because that was why I first got in touch, was because I think through the podcast you mentioned about the travel agency Nomadic Scuba, and I thought, okay, well, might be interested in what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
You said, well, that's and as you know, like when you're small, I guess it's one of the advantages we have is that we can be quite agile.
Yeah,
but you've got to allow yourself to be agile. Pick carefully who you would like to work with.
Mm. The thing that I did when I started, sorry to interject there, but the thing I did as soon as I decided I'm going for it, I was leaving Papua New Guinea. I'd already thought about doing Nomadic Scuba and then jumped back into Thailand for a season. I thought, right, we're going for this. I need to see the locations that I'm advertising. The last thing I want to do is advertise a location for someone to spend a lot of money on and then come back to me very disappointed. That would just, it would eat me alive. So I spent a lot of money, and it was a good jolly. I spent a lot of money traveling to different locations and just diving at resorts and liverboards, all that kind of stuff, just so I could experience it myself and talk with experience to potential customers. And now I'm, comfortably in that position where I can select who I'm going to advertise. And those that I don't know, I'll aim to go and see. And it sounds like all I'm doing is building a little empire so I can go travelling and go diving. Well, effectively I am. But moreover, my little booster is being able to get customers to operators' doors, yourself, for example. I'd be super keen to advertise your expeditions and get money rolling through your door and keep the industry alive, and do it in a community feel way rather than just a corporate way, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The kickback is, I have to take some sort of wage out of it so I can live and survive, but that's business. But if I can make people happy and put back into the dive industry what it's given to me, I'm all for it, 100%.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
So not dive Cairns yet, so I might be coming up to you for a little trip on MV Argo.
Yeah, no, let me know. Yeah, if it's not this year, it was. We're trying to be pretty careful this year. Just the 3 trips. But as you say, those invoices, I didn't want one of those rolling into my inbox every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So, played it safe, but next year's looking like it could be, pretty cool.
Yeah. JFDI, mate, just fucking do it. You're in one of the best locations in the world for diving. Everybody wants to go to the Great Barrier Reef. Doors are opening up again. Do it.
Yeah. Because I think one of the things that I guess gave me even a bit more optimism was a good friend of mine in San Diego. He was saying that, a lot of his friends who had, XYZ travel plans before COVID, that then weren't able to get away, they'd been planning to go, various parts of the world, various exotic locations. But now a lot of them have changed their tune and they're like, well, we're still going to go away, but we're going to go to New Zealand or Australia now, because if things, if things go to gravy again and we get stuck somewhere, let's get stuck in Australia or New Zealand, somewhere that's, relatively civilized and, will look after us. So, so that was quite interesting to hear that as well. That I guess just the way that people's approach or mentality around travel's going to be different for quite a while, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've recently come back from Thailand, and that was the first trip since the pandemic hit. And just jumping through the hoops to get into the country and get back it's quite smooth now. And you can see how it was just getting better and better. But it was a bit of a pain in the arse to figure out and organise. And the main thing there is the insurance side of things. Countries can impose their own restrictions, and like Thailand did, it said you have to provide proof of $20,000 cover just for any COVID infection. That's beyond anything else on your travel.
Wow.
And your dive insurance, etc. So it's going to be a pain in the arse, and there's going to be reluctance for people to take the risk. But at the same side of the coin, those locations that haven't been dived for so many years are now primed, because it's not had the common regular disruption of many divers in the water. And I know we mentioned Koh Tao earlier on. I did pop back to Koh Tao for a few days and did a couple of dives with my mate. And I was actually suitably impressed in the volume of fish in comparison to what I remember. So I can only imagine that, the Barrier Reef itself is probably going to be, much the same. Had a little bit of time to regenerate and recoup.
Yeah, it's Thailand's definitely on our list. We're trying to get there in the next couple of years if we can. It's
just to go back and have a look at changes.
Well, I don't know. Well, to be honest, one of the big ones will be, hopefully in a couple of years, my daughter will be old enough to get certified, and we'd love to take her to the Simmerlands.
Oh, mate, No, listen, hey, tell you what, seriously, if you want to go to the Simmerlands and you could even plan in your own little Scuba IQ expedition, I'll hook you up. A very good mate of mine, Steve Vessel, crazy Dutchman. He's the owner of the Junk, which was on the James Bond movies, and the Finnissy. And his team on the Junk and the Finnissy are just outstanding individuals. I love the lot of them. So as and when she's old enough and ready to dive, you can take her there and plan an expedition. I'll hook you guys up, and you can have a dream on those boats. It's really really good.
Yeah, because that's actually been one of the locations where, once I'd been over there and got to see what it was like for myself, especially then coming here, and a lot of people that make it to Cairns or the Great Barrier Reef early in their career, a lot of them tend to stay here, and they punch out quite lengthy careers, because it's one of the locations in the world as a dive instructor you're paid well, generally. Yeah. You got good job security as long as there are no pandemics, and so people are really building their lives here off the back of being a dive instructor. Buying houses and all of these sorts of things that normal people get to do, that when you're an instructor in Thailand, I mean, that's the furthest thing from your mind. And I sort of say to a lot of them, especially the younger ones, like, hey, I mean, you can always come back here. You're an Aussie, you're a Kiwi, you can always come and work here. Go to Khao Lak, go and work a 6-month season on the Simmerlands. Like, just go and see another side of this industry, have fun. You'll save a bit of money because you're on a liveaboard. And, get a bit of experience teaching courses, get some variety in what you're doing, because, as people burn out. Yeah. They get, you get jaded. And I guess, that was, I mean, I had that when I was in the Mediterranean. I burnt out, after my first couple of years, and took a year off, and I left my dive gear at my sister's house in England and said, if I come back and want my dive gear, or I call you and want you to send it to me, don't. Like, I don't want to see my dive gear for a couple of years. I just need to go and think about this. It took some time out, and thought, okay, I think I'm ready to give it another go. Yeah. And didn't look back since. I haven't had a break since then. That was, 2008. Was after I took a year off. So, it's, I guess it's one of the running jokes as well up here over the years is, Thailand instructors. But, I mean, I would honestly say that some of the best instructors I've ever known or worked with have been in Thailand. Yeah, yeah. Without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, it's, like you say, it's one of those things that gets pointed out. Thailand and Honduras, where, a lot of people go when they're young to do their initial scuba diving training because it's cheap. It's 30-degree water. There's beer on tap. There's chicks in bikinis. There's parties. It's got all the attraction of tourism and excitement. So, yes, there are a lot of people that go and dive in those locations. And a lot of people can say that they're factories. I would kind of agree with that. However, you can't diss an instructor for being good enough to teach 6 people proficiently and arguably better than people that have had a career where they've taught one-on-one for the last 10 years. You need your wits about you if you're going to teach 6 people open water and do it confidently, competently, and safely. So I would, like you said, I would urge young dive pros, use Thailand, use Honduras, use these locations that have cheap diving, and go and experience it for yourselves, have fun, and gain the experience that you get from someone who can really teach big groups at such a low level. It just makes the rest of your dive career relatively simple. It's it's a big tick in my box. I'd never push someone away that came looking for a job if they'd been working in Thailand or Honduras in these big industries. It's you can multitask if you can do that underwater. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like the guy you were talking to last week, he said that, being a dive instructor, you basically become very good at organising a lot of things at the last minute.
Yeah.
And, but again, somewhere like Thailand, that is where you get that, it's, you might go into the shop in the morning. It's like, hey, the guys are in the classroom. They're watching video 1. They've done the paperwork, but they're yours. Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. But once you've been there for long enough, getting told that first thing in the morning, it's not like, what do I do? It's, this will be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes second nature. It really does.
Yeah.
And you get up in the morning excited to go to work because you've got work and that it's going to be good fun.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved every minute I was in Thailand, and I love every minute that I go back to Thailand. Yeah, it's my second home for sure.
And it was cool that, where I seen that you, listened to you talking to other people that I know, like Libby, Marcus, can't remember who else you've spoken to, I'm trying to think. But I think you've had about 4 or 5 people on here before that I know, some of them quite well, especially Marcus.
Yeah.
Again, Marcus from Thailand. Yeah. He was doing his dive master with an instructor I worked with. That was, 2011, I think.
Okay.
Marcus did his dive master, and then I think he had a couple of years out before he moved back to Thailand, sort of 2014 or 2015, something like that. And yeah, carried on.
I met him, was it 2018? Yeah, I think 2018, 2019. 2019, I think. I took an expedition to Komodo Dive Resort, or Komodo Resort and Dive Club, and he was the dive ops manager there with Flo, and we had a fantastic time. And he's now doing quite all right for himself. He's picked up a job with Snorkel Venture, and he's just come off a boat in French Polynesia. Jammy bugger. That's not bad.
He's had a rough ride the last few years.
Rough ride. He's gone home, played with his motorbikes, and then picked up an ace job. He's done all right.
Yeah. But no, good on him. And that's what the dive industry is. There are a lot of opportunities that you don't realise have been in front of you, or opportunities you've turned down, and and I guess that's one of the things that I would say, over the years when I've taught dive master courses or assisted on IDCs, is that, almost our biggest problem is that we have too many options.
Yeah.
But it takes some work to be able to, take advantage of some of them. There are so many things you can do with your career in the dive industry. Yeah.
And then you can work your way up to dizzy heights of organising expeditions in the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah, heavy lies the crown.
Yeah. Hey, I noticed, we've not even touched on it, but are you still doing the dive courses, or is the liveaboard starting to take a main front row seat?
No. So we still teach courses. We're a dual agency, so predominantly PADI.
Yeah.
We also teach SDI, TDI. So that's sort of coming through more and more. And Scuba IQ has been built really on teaching courses. And it was one of the things, if not the thing, that, when I was starting the business, that, I wanted to get away from, just guiding and doing intros, which is the main thing done on the boats here. Get back to teaching again.
Yeah.
So a lot of open water courses, and all the others as well. Over the first few years, there were some, sort of younger locals that were coming through, and, we did their dive master courses, that sort of thing. So the courses are still a really important part. It's one of the things that I like to do the most, so that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's, that keeps going, and the expeditions are now sort of I guess in some regards, the separate thing.
Yeah. Would you like another string to your bow?
What's that?
Do you want to do raid as well?
Well, it came up. I mean, I've I'm an instructor for a few different agencies, although actively only for SDI, TDI and PADI.
Yeah.
There was, I haven't seen him for a while. There's a guy up here who was a RAID representative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he does all of Australia, Steve Bates.
Yeah, he does.
I think he's actually got another very successful business down in Cairns, a printing agency.
Mm-hmm.
So they do like our logbooks and mast tamers and all the other bits and pieces for us, uniforms. So yeah, it did come up a few years ago, and it's bouncing around in there.
I would do it, mate. I would do it. It's I mean, you look back, way back, season 1, I think it was. We had Paul Toomer on, president of RAID.
Yeah,
good mate of mine. But they're now, as long as you certify 5 people a year, whatever level, then there's no pro fees, there's no dive centre fees, nothing. So you can actually deliver, and it's all online as well. It's all digital. So, and I'm a big advocate for RAID. I mean, I'm PADI and SSI as well, but I think the way that RAID teaches, and when it's done well, it's a fantastic teaching style. Yeah. It really is. But yeah. Well, if you know Steve, I would urge you to get back in touch with him and have a little chat. Be well worth it.
I guess it's sort of the idea, re-emerged when you spoke to Ryan Duchatel a while ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, probably to do with RAID, but also I'd say, their own sort of core values and principles when it comes to teaching. But, they like to teach the smaller numbers and that sort of thing. So very similar to what we do here, So, for example, an open water course, the most that I'll take on my own now will be 3.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's, let's say, a family of 5, I bring another instructor in.
Yeah.
So just to try and break it down even a bit more. It was quite interesting listening to them, and it's kind of like, well, that kind of sounds a little bit like what we are or what we do as well. So, it's, yeah. But like I say, that, there might even be, part of that, owed to what RAID's sort of principles and philosophies are behind, good teaching and,
yeah,
because that's, it's one thing I said a number of times over the years, especially on IDCs, was that, even though when you first become an instructor, we all do it because we don't have any other way really at that stage. But when you teach a course, it's quite mechanical.
Yeah.
It's, you're going through the slates, you're checking everything off, and, you sort of get to the point, that's what I said to these candidates on a number of times, was that the aim isn't just to teach a course, it's to train divers, and so don't be sort of too indoctrinated, or don't be so caught up in the detail. Just think about what it is you're really trying to achieve by doing this, and and don't get too carried away with trying to show how much you know, or you're just trying to give this person the skills that they can go away and dive without you there telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And it's a bit more about the function of it, rather than, the form.
Exactly. It's one of the things that I get asked so often is, should I use PADI, SSI, RAID, NAUI, CMAS, Aussie, YMCA, whatever? Who do I train under? And generally it comes from, newbies, inquisitive people. And we've got to point out that, if people come in new into the industry, they're unknowing, they don't know, so they're looking for that advice. And my advice would always be, it doesn't matter which agency you're learning under. What is important is the person that's delivering that information, because that person can be the most experienced diver in the world. If they can't deliver information so that it's retained, then it's a pointless task. It'll be a shit course. So your first value is the instructor that's delivering the information, and whether it's information you can retain. Beyond that, I think the agencies are all much the same. They're delivering not instruction, but recommendations on how to teach these basic skills to to the recipient. And I think the bond between the agencies and the instructor is where the differences come in when you're looking at the different agencies. And what I mean by that is that I might be able to teach in a RAID format better than I do a PADI format. And you might be able to teach vice versa. So depending on what our student wants to learn will depend on which instructor will be able to deliver that in the fashion that they retain the information.
Yeah.
So that was a very long-winded way of saying it doesn't really matter about agencies. It's more about the person that's teaching. But going on from that, the only other time that I would recommend people to start really looking at which agency they're using to learn under is when they're looking to become a dive professional, dive master and above. Do they want to be working in America? In which case, the obvious thing would be that they'd be better off being PADI because there's more PADI dive centres over there.
Yeah.
I
nearly ended up as a NAUI instructor because of that. Because NAUI had a bit more presence in New Zealand in the early 2000s.
Yeah. A perfect example. Yeah.
But yeah. Sorry, I totally cut you off there.
That's all right. You need to sometimes, otherwise I'll just keep on going. But yeah, jump on the RAID bandwagon, mate. It's well worth it.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it's, you end up in some situations, not just in courses, but, let's say you've got some divers for the day and they might ask you a question. And I mean, you try not to sound dismissive or like you're being blasé, but they might ask you about something. It might be like their buddy checks. And, it's almost to the point that you say, well, look, if you consider the fact that each of the organisations, they don't agree on the sequence that should be used, but they do agree on what should be done.
Yes.
So it's not like I can impose, any sort of particular, idea onto you. All I care about is that they're done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me how you do them, but find a way that you prefer or that is easy to remember and just do it that way every time.
Have you got emails coming through or something? Because it keeps pinging.
Yes, there's something going on. I'm not sure what it is.
Do you remember what I said the other day?
Yeah.
That's a crate of beer, my man.
So no, but like you say, it's a good point. Find the right instructor rather than look for the agency.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's if you rock up somewhere and you're not really liking the person that stood in front of you for whatever reason, or just feel a little bit uncomfortable, then it's probably not the right place to be. Find someone that you're comfortable with, and go from there. Yeah. All right, mate. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. And everyone that's listening out there, get in touch with Scuba IQ if you want to hit the Great Barrier Reef and get on board and have a lot of fun. Thanks for listening now. Bye, everybody.
This is Scuba Goat Under the Sea, the podcast for the inquisitive diver.